Good morning. I am feeling very optimistic about life this morning, and at this time of the day, the beams aren't too heavy, so I'm in a good place. Indeed, I was thinking about a theory I'd read that the Sephardic Hebrews had basically figured out much of the mechanisms of Illuminati programming and the computerized and mechanized forms of mind control via microchips and drugging, i.e., portions of the MK Ultra and Mindgate programs, and were basically attempting to penetrate and take over the Illuminati cult, i.e., the Anglo German Gentile controlling factions of British intelligence and the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst networks. Indeed, these Sephardic Hebrew networks had not teamed up with the Ashkenazim Hebrews, but had instead formed networks with the sheikhs of various Arab countries, such as Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries, as they surmise with clarity that these networks of people are of the same genetic lineage, which does seem to be the case. And these networks are attempting to basically overrule the current Illuminati hierarchy. However, I'm not entirely sure how much luck they would have against the Anglo-German secret societies. However, it is quite interesting to note the alliances in the Middle East at the moment, with the Gulf nations and Israel being aligned together, which may be reflective of this theory. Indeed, the mechanized and computerized Illuminati cult programming, i.e., the MK Ultra and Mindgate programs, are ongoing projects, and they have not ended, despite them, especially in the case of MK Ultra, becoming public knowledge. The program was not terminated, as we are led to believe. Indeed, the key to understanding the hierarchy of the Illuminati pyramid is that those at the top of the Illuminati pyramid have knowledge of mind control and programming and the technologies of mind control and programming, and are able to use that mind control programming on the lower ranking operatives of the Illuminati networks. Indeed, such is the case with the Rothschild family, who believe that they are at the top of the pyramid, but are in fact really quite far down, and as John Scarlett stated, are semi-autonomous, basically operative robots, and that they are under generational mind control programming by the higher ranking networks of the Anglo German cryptocracy. Indeed, the Rothschild networks are of Ashkenazi heritage and are Frankists, indeed, but do not seem to be in alignment with the Sephardic and Sheikh factions that I mentioned earlier. Indeed, there seem to be many different factions within Hebrew intelligence, all working for different ambitions and aims. And these factions will also be being penetrated by various networks of the Anglo-German cryptocracy in an attempt to control these networks. Indeed, Russian intelligence also has a stake within Israeli intelligence due to the Russian Hebrew community spanning back 300 years. And there is a large criminal empire of Russian Hebrews who basically control many percentages of the overarching Russian mafia, though the majority of the Russian mafia on street level would be ethnic Russians, but there are large percentages of Russian originating Hebrews operating, and many of them operate in the Western countries. Indeed, it is very interesting to look at these networks and to try and build a bigger picture. Indeed, it seems that the United Kingdom has basically descended into an empire of crime, and there are organized crime groups of various nationalities, all divided into ethnicities. Indeed, organized crime is notable for the fact that it divides into ethnic groups. And potentially the most prominent in the UK, as I've mentioned, is the Albanian mafia, who were given free rein by the British intelligence services for their operations. Indeed, that project began in the 1940s and 1950s, but really came to prominence in the 1990s. And the Kosovo War was a stage set up with the Rachak massacre actually being carried out by the Kosovo Liberation Army on their own citizens and blamed on the Serbs. It was a false flag. It was effectively a Gladio II operation. And this led to the creation of the narco state of Kosovo, which was basically a collusion between drug barons and intelligence operatives of the NATO countries coming together to basically build their own black hole, i.e., a narco state in the Balkans. And these networks of Albanian mobsters have spread from the Balkans into all of the Western nations and have controlling percentages of much of the narcotics, arms, organs, and prostitution trades, and have basically diminished the power of the traditional organized crime groups such as the Sicilian mafia, who actually seem to be very scared of the Albanian mafia. Though in the future, I believe we shall see more visible operations in the UK from the Russian mafia, who will themselves be coordinated by the FSB, SVR, and GRU networks of Russian intelligence, though MI5 seems to have a controlling percentage of the Russian mafia within Britain. Indeed, it's arguable that the entire Russian mafia is controlled by British intelligence, which is very interesting. And as I've stated before, much of the Russian intelligence services are controlled by British intelligence and the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst, with the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst probably having the majority percentage of control of the Russian intelligence structure. And this dates back to a network of the Prussian intelligence service in the early 1800s, basically helping to set up the modern Russian intelligence structure. Indeed, during the Napoleonic Wars, the GRU was created, and much of that had to do with support from Prussian intelligence, who were advising the nascent Russian intelligence networks. And there has been a cross continuum and sharing of information between German originating and Russian intelligence networks since then. Indeed, the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst coordinated much of Soviet intelligence activity during the Cold War, just as they did British and American intelligence activity, as well as French, during the Cold War. And meanwhile, British intelligence and Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst networks were teaming up through the Propaganda Due P2 Masonic Lodge to fully penetrate and co-opt the Vatican intelligence structure. Interestingly, with logistical support from GRU operatives pretending to be priests, who themselves were actually initially Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst controlled cells of the GRU, which is very interesting how it all links up. Indeed, Pope John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła, was a Polish operative of the IG-FARP and NW7 networks and was a technician at IG Monowitz, which was the IG Farben plant not far from the IG Auschwitz Arbeitslager. Indeed, it seems that interesting that an NW7 IG Farben operative would become the head of the papacy. And this just shows that these German networks had fully begun to infiltrate the Vatican structure by this time. Indeed, it's also arguable that Pope Pius XII, Eugenio Pacelli, was himself controlled by German intelligence. Though it's interesting to see some of the intelligence networks that were rotating around the Vatican at that time, such as the Pro Deo network, which was mainly Dominican priests and was set up by the Office of Strategic Services as a route of penetration into the Vatican structures that was effectively operating in alignment with Nazi interests, despite the US and the Nazis being on different sides of the war. Both took the occasion to take advantage of the situation with the Vatican for their own intelligence aims and ambitions. Indeed, the head of the Abwehr, who became the head of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, did not die in the Second World War, and the von Stauffenberg assassination plot against Hitler was actually a front whereby many Abwehr operatives could basically feign their own deaths. Indeed, they were not killed by the Nazi hierarchy for an attempt of assassination on Hitler. This was in fact a ploy, and these networks of the Abwehr were then able to assume undercover identities and branch out into Spain, South America, and the Arab world, and basically continue to run their networks that would become the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. Indeed, Martin Bormann escaped and was basically running much of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst activity in South America, linking to the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst networks in the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union. Indeed, as I've stated, the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst were running the Cold War, though the Cold War was itself foreseen by General Albert Pike, so this would hint to a level of British involvement, though it could be argued that Albert Pike was himself a German intelligence operative and part of networks which were basically precursors to the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst. Indeed, the network of Albert Pike, Lord Palmerston, Otto von Bismarck, and the basically the constructor of the Italian and Sicilian mafia networks, Giuseppe Mazzini, was very much an overarching operation by the Anglo-German secret societies. So Albert Pike was both a British intelligence operative and a Prussian and later German intelligence operative, thereby Illuminati. He was one of the most prominent Illuminati operatives of his day. Indeed, the networks of the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst have always focused much of their operations on Russia and attempting to coerce Russians into a technocratic order which they would dominate. However, the one population of people that the technocrats are having difficulty controlling are the Russians, despite mass penetration and infiltration and coercion within the Russian intelligence services by British and German intelligence networks. However, the Russian soul is proving very hard for these Anglo-German networks to destroy, which is very interesting considering the unique nature of the Russian intellect, which is a story which is very similar to the attitude of the Anglo-German intelligence networks to the schizophrenic intellect, whereby they are confused by the mechanisms of the schizophrenic intellect, just as they are confused by the mechanisms of the Russian intellect. And that's very interesting if you consider a Russian schizophrenic who has double the mindset that the Anglo-German cryptocracy are at one time fascinated by and in another time wish to destroy. Indeed, as I was stating, much of what is occurring in the NATO countries and, of course, the Russian Federation has its roots in German psychiatry from the 18th and 19th centuries, where much of the mass programming of society was created. The ideas were laid down in German psychiatric thought of the 1700s and 1800s for the mass programming of society today, which is a form of fascism. It is techno-fascism, but it is not necessarily exactly the same as the fascist regimes we witnessed from the 1920s to the 1940s. However, there are many crossovers there. Indeed, I'm going to leave it there because I'm a little bit confused this morning.